Welcome back to the show today. We are talking about retirement, or specifically, when is the right time for an athlete to retire or end his career. Some athletes want to go out on top. They want to be remembered at their peak, while some are completely fine with a slow decline until they can't get a job anymore. Also, what's the experience like having to come to terms with the fact that you can't play a sport for your entire life? Having to accept that the thing that you dedicated your entire life to, and for most athletes where they derive all of their self-worth from, is now coming to an end. Who are you? What do you do? So let's talk about a player who's probably the most likely NBA great to retire. I'm talking about Chris Paul. Chris Paul managed to get a one-year contract with the Spurs last year. A $10 million contract, which is pretty decent. This was a really interesting signing. You would think that a 39-year-old NBA veteran that hadn't won a championship would want to go to a contender. And the Spurs last summer were far from being a contender. They finished 22-60 last season. Well, the reason is, for Chris Paul, winning a championship really isn't a priority for him. CP3's priority is playing basketball, and if he's not playing basketball, he's not happy. He said that himself. So he went to a place that had minutes to give him and money to give him as well. So his contract is for $10 million, and that's the amount of money you would give a player who you intend to play, who you intend to give minutes. As a fan, we look at veterans who have made tons of money in their career and we say, why don't they take less money? Why don't they go to a team and try to win a championship? They've already made a lot. They're so rich, what's taking a $5 or $6 million pay cut? Chris Paul has made $400 million of career earnings. Why is it so important for him to make $10 million? It's because if a team will spend money on you, it means they will play you. A team offering a player a lot of money is them saying, hey, we want to work around you. You're important. Chris Paul wants to be valued. That's what he wants. He doesn't really want a ring. Sure, he could have signed a one-year deal with the Celtics, sat behind Peyton Pritchard and Drew Holiday. Chris Paul would have hated that though. He'd rather be a vital part of a bad team than an afterthought on a good team, which is something I really respect about Chris Paul. He's not a ring chaser and he's really not a bag chaser either. Chris Paul was not happy that he only started 18 games last year with the Warriors. He wants to be a starting point guard on an NBA team where he doesn't want anything at all. So I'm really curious to see what happens next year. I don't know if the Spurs are going to offer him another contract. He'll probably have to come to terms with the fact that he is now a backup point guard in the league, which would be respectable. He's going to be 40 years old in May. There's no one left in the league from his draft class. Just for reference, Andrew Bynum was in his draft class. You haven't seen that guy on an NBA court in 10 years. So maybe you see CP3 signing another contract with the Spurs next year, but I could also see him signing a head coaching job with the Spurs next year. I'm not saying it's likely, but it's the only way he's not going to sign a contract where he doesn't think he's going to be the starting point guard. So CP3 to me is the player who refuses to gracefully fade away. So now we need to talk about LeBron James's retirement. I'm not here to ride LeBron James. If it's been said once, it's been said 10,000 times. It's unbelievable what he's doing at this age. A 40-year-old man dominating in the same league that his son plays in. I mean, Ken Griffey Sr. was not making all-star teams when Ken Griffey Jr. had entered the league. I only bring this up for context. LeBron James has been an all-NBA player for the past 20 years. He's been deemed one of the 15 best players in the league. That is the expected level of play for LeBron James. It is very important to LeBron to be on an all-NBA team. I know this because when they started adding the 65-game requirement to be on an all-NBA team, LeBron started playing 65 games because there were a few seasons there where he was resting a lot. There were seasons where he was playing in the low 50s and he was still being selected to be on all-NBA teams. It wasn't right, man, because the media wasn't going to not put LeBron James on an all-NBA team. He's the face of the league. They had to do it. I say this because I believe LeBron will retire when he either doesn't make an all-NBA team or when he feels like he can't make one. Once he loses that level of relevance, he's out. He's gone. I also don't think we're going to see LeBron sign anything less than a max contract. We're not going to see LeBron James come off the bench either. LeBron will retire as one of the best players in the league. He will not shift into a role player position. So LeBron has dialed back his defensive effort a bit. He's also not taking it to the rack every play. But LeBron is always going to get his numbers. He's going to get his stats. He's going to maintain his reputation as one of the guys. And then secondarily to that, I think he's motivated to win another championship. He's not going to catch MJ when it comes to rings, but he might catch Kobe. And if he gets one more with the Lakers, I could see them building a statue for LeBron James outside the Staples Center or the whatever they call it. Now we got to talk about how Kobe Bryant's career ended. Kobe Bryant was perennially an all-NBA player and an all-star. He made 11 first-team all-NBA. The last one being in 2013 when he was 34 years old. He was still one of the best players in the league at that age. But here's where I think Kobe went wrong. Kobe did not want to miss the playoffs that year. He'd only missed the playoffs twice in his entire career. His rookie year and then in 2005 after Shaq had left. This caused Kobe to push himself way too hard. The Lakers were fighting for the 8th seed that year. So towards the end of the season, Kobe was basically playing entire games. He was giving it everything he possibly had. So after 7 games in a row where he was averaging 45 minutes, Kobe tore his Achilles tendon on April 12, 2013. You've probably seen the video of Kobe Bryant shooting free throws with a torn Achilles. This is sort of a lesson in accepting your mortality. The Lakers did make the first round of the playoffs, but they got swept by the Spurs. And obviously Kobe wasn't playing. I think Kobe saw his Lakers team fading away in front of him, but he wasn't willing to come to terms with it. He pushed himself until his body gave out. Kobe worked incredibly hard to get back into game condition for the next season, but within 6 games he fractured his knee. Then the following year when he was dunking, he tore his rotator cuff. He only ended up playing 35 games. Kobe never saw the postseason again. Kobe didn't have the ability to turn off that Mamba mentality. He couldn't help but go ham every single game, even though his body just couldn't handle the workload. I don't know if anyone's could. It's interesting though, because this is still why Kobe is celebrated. In the era of load management, people were always talking about how Kobe played every game because he knew people were coming to see him. He never took games off, he didn't like minutes restrictions. So I think the way Kobe's career flamed out was a representation of how he lived, committing his entirety to the task at hand and disregarding his limitations. So I want to talk about the athlete that I believe has had the weirdest retirement of all time. That is Zinedine Zidane, who I believe went out on a particularly low note. Zidane is the best French footballer of all time. He won a Champions League, he won the World Cup, he's a 3-time FIFA World Player of the Year winner, and in 2006 he was on top of the world. He even took France to the World Cup final. But here's where it gets weird. Earlier that summer, Zidane had said he was going to retire after the World Cup. So the fact that the World Cup final was his last game is really poetic. Remember, the World Cup is the most watched televised event in the world, and it only happens every 4 years. For my American friends, this is not the Super Bowl. So France was tied with Italy 1-1 in extra time. The game was about to go into penalty kicks. Zidane says to Marco Materazzi, after the game, I'll give you my jersey. Marco Materazzi says, I'd rather have your sister. Pretty innocuous. Zidane's sister is pretty. Zidane headbutts him in the chest. And one thing you should know, basketball fans, is European footballers invented flopping. If you think flopping in the NBA is impressive, man, you haven't seen nothing yet. So Materazzi goes flying, the 4th official sees it and gives him a red card. And that's how his illustrious career as one of the greatest football players of all time ends, walking past the World Cup trophy off the field. While the game goes into penalty kicks and his team loses. Materazzi made his penalty kick, by the way. And to make things even weirder, Zidane won the golden ball, essentially the finals MVP of the tournament, and he was the captain of the losing team. Zidane was fined and he was suspended for 3 games, but it didn't matter, he'd already retired. But evidently the vibe in France was that the headbutt was honorable, and it became a symbol of having passion for sports. But to me, this feels like revisionist history a bit, because on paper, it's just the story of a guy who lost his cool at the end of a tie game, and he wasn't there to take a penalty kick to hopefully win the World Cup for his team. I think the French just romanticize it because the truth is just so sad. So I love a comeback. I love it when a player comes out of retirement, especially when I think that a player has more to give the sport. Personally, I'm still waiting for Calvin Johnson to come back and give it one more year, but I have to talk about Michael Jordan when it comes to retirement, because Michael Jordan did a double pump fake when it comes to leaving the NBA. The first time was after winning 3 titles in a row in 1993. He won the scoring title 7 times and he had 3 league MVPs, all before the age of 30. Some people say that he was actually suspended, that he didn't leave at all, that David Stern made him leave the NBA because he was gambling, which was debunked by David Stern in The Last Dance. Maybe some people still believe it. Jordan said he wanted to try professional baseball to honor his father, which he did follow through with, but I think Michael Jordan retired because he was bored. I've heard Shaq say this before. He said winning's boring, which sounds condescending to the rest of the league, but I got a feeling it's true. Holding the Larry O'Brien trophy for the 3rd time in 3 years probably starts to feel familiar. MJ had accomplished the same goal 3 times in a row. I have to imagine that's not that interesting. Then after 2 years of playing baseball, I think he missed the game. His passion was reignited. So he came back, broke the all-time regular season win count record twice, won 3 more championships and 2 more league MVPs. And then he retired again because I think he got bored again. And I'm not joking, I'm not trying to be a but part of me kind of feels bad for Michael Jordan that he didn't have anyone that was adequate competition for him. So after he retired again in '98, he came back in 2001. This is personally my favorite part of the Michael Jordan story arc, and it's one that most people try to forget about. Michael Jordan owned a stake in the Washington Wizards, and he was the vice president of basketball then. He couldn't bear how bad his Wizards team was, so he sold his stake in the team and came back and played. He didn't even want the money, he donated his salary to the victims of 9/11. Jordan played for the Wizards for 2 more years, from the age of 30 38 to 40. His last season, he played all 82 games, by the way, before finally retiring for the last time. I think MJ's career was guided by the avoidance of boredom and having to sit alone with yourself. It makes you realize that even if you're the best at what you do, it's never going to be enough. Regardless of where you are in your life, you're always going to have to figure out a new challenge to achieve satisfaction. Alright, thank you for being here. Like the video if you enjoyed it. This was not a recommendation. I will do a recommendation someday. I just wanted to do this one on my own. I'm a selfish person. I'm a bad guy. But you should still be good to your mothers and eat a corn dog, and then like the video if I didn't say that.